What is up, fellow nerds, and welcome to Not Just Status Quo. I am Dave, and today we will be doing a breakdown and review of the episode that made me feel like a 6-year-old again, The Mandalorian Season 2 finale.
Hey all, I'm Doug, and this chapter is called The Rescue, which is perfect because more than one thing is being rescued here. Spoilers, not just Grogu, not just my childhood, but dare I say, this episode brought the Star Wars fans back together.
It may have. It was so good. Hey everyone, I'm Keith, and please, if you like the content, do all that YouTube stuff, because like Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau are telling all Star Wars projects after this is the way.
Here we go.
Thanks everybody for coming back to Not Your Status Quo. Today we are talking all things Chapter 16 of The Mandalorian, The Rescue, and we have 8 things that we think worked and 3 that did not. And we're going to jump right in. The first being the plan to rescue Grogan. I thought they did a good job of making sure that they, brought Bokeh on, because it didn't, but it may have, tricked Moth Gideon a little bit into thinking it was just her coming after the Darksaber, and he wouldn't have to worry about Din rescuing Grogan.
Yeah, this is one of the things that we were actually theorizing. We assumed that the other Mandalorians were going to be hanging out with Din. We knew that he was going to be getting his party together. We were a little bit off on who all would be included. We kind of assumed that it was going to be Boba Fett and the other Mandalorians. But I thought that Ahsoka was somehow going to join in as well. And we definitely didn't completely see that ending coming. We'll be talking about what happened with that a little bit later on. But yeah, this was pretty cool. And like what Keith said, yeah, I don't know that Moth Gideon was completely tricked. I have a feeling that he was definitely, 5 moves ahead of everybody else. And I pretty sure that he had an inkling of what was headed his way and how he wanted to handle it.
Yeah, it's great, and I love how they put the team together. No matter what, he just cuts through all the crap when he runs into people that he needs help from. He'll ask him for help. They'll deny him, and what does he say? They've got the kid. Boom! It changes everybody's mind. I love it.
They took the child.
And that leads us perfectly into our next, is the tension between Boba Fett and Bo-Katan. When Din Djarin and Boba go to recruit some more Mandalorians, we find out that there's a little animosity between Bo-Katan and Boba Fett. She knows that he is a clone of Jango Fett. And, he knows that she's a princess who lost a Darksaber for whatever reason, or a tribe wants to rule Mandalore. And it was just great that they're just not buddies right away. Boba is a bounty hunter, and she probably has little respect for him, and vice versa. He probably has very little respect for her.
Yeah, I look at this in a different way. When Boba Fett meets Bo-Katan, and they had that sparring conversation, and he actually gets in a fight with Casca. And I think that it's just posturing. That's what they do in this universe. They can't be soft right off the bat. They got to be hard and let each other know that they're for real. Because later on in the episode, if you notice, they each tell each other right before the mission to be careful. So I think it's less tension between the two of them. But they got to show each other that they're for real. So that's my take on it.
I also took this as a bit of a carryover from the Clone Wars when Obi-Wan was asking Prime Minister Almec about Jango Fett and the sort of animosity that existed back then. Them saying that he's no Mandalorian. And I'm just wondering if this is kind of like a common ongoing thing for the higher classes of Mandalore, for them to just have this feeling about the Fetts in general.
Yeah, that the kind of the last conversation between Bo-Katan and Boba Fett, I took it a little different way than Dave. I took it like, she's like, "Oh, watch out for those cannons, make sure you can get away." And he's like, "Oh, don't worry about me, princess." There was still some animosity between them, and they were just kind of getting in jabs at the end right there. And that leads us to the next thing, the Dark Troopers in action. I mean, the music, them getting fired up, the fact that Moff Gideon knew to, get them powered up right away, I thought just worked on so many levels. It was so cool seeing them finally getting ready to fight.
Yeah, activating the Dark Troopers was awesome. It was an ominous threat that did not disappoint. You saw a bit of them in the last episode, or the other episode where they got Grogu. I can't remember the name of it, but and you've had this ominous threat all throughout this season. and they come out and they really were that badass. Some of them, you know, if you remember, like Lord of the Rings, perhaps, where they're underground and you know, they get trapped by the Balrog, and he says, "This is beyond all of you," and then like 2 seconds later, the thing's dead. It didn't have that kind of build up and drop off. The Dark Troopers were awesome.
And yeah, they really were a real major threat. Even Moth Gideon says so later on in the episode, as he's kind of joking in a way about you could barely handle one. What are you going to do when you have to deal with an entire platoon of them? But yeah, one alone was definitely giving Din Djarin a run for his money, really beating him into his helmet. And if he didn't have on his Beskar armor, oh, he would have been dead for sure. I was getting some, you know, you guys know what a big Terminator nerd I am. I was getting some Terminator vibes to this. These robotic death killing monstrosities just, you know, on the prowl. They're trying to pound through the glass. And yeah, it was very ominous, like what Dave said. It was just like, oh man, how the heck is he going to deal with these guys?
Yeah, and I thought that this I don't want to foreshadow too much into our video, but there's two characters who did very well against these Dark Troopers. Din, although they did differently. I mean, Din took care of the one, and then he got rid of the other ones through the space hole. So if he had his ship and he had achieved his goal, he could have got out of there without any more interaction with the Dark Troopers. So I count that as a win for Din.
And that leads us into the overall action for this episode. And there was a lot of it. You know, we saw Boba Fett fighting other Mandalorians. We saw, you know, Din versus a Dark Trooper. We saw Din versus Moff Gideon. We saw, you know, Cara Dune and the Girl Patrol, you know, hammering out a bunch of stormtroopers to get done. I mean, then we saw that final scene, which we'll talk about in a minute, that just really was absolutely phenomenal and so well put together.
Yeah, and they didn't force any of this either. It was with the crew that he had and the action being so badass. I mean, you know, when the girl power scenes, when the girls were all together, it was so natural for them to be together and kicking ass like they did. You know, in other projects in other universes, it seems a little shoehorned. This was perfect. It went right in there.
I said during one of our reviews and breakdowns of the last episode of The Boys, I had said that I really appreciated their kind of similar in a way girl power moment. And I kind of commented that in a way they did it better than I felt that the MCU had. And once again, I've seen a TV show do it better than the MCU did. I appreciate those fun little moments. It was a little corny in my opinion when it was done in the Avengers, both Infinity War and Endgame, but I really thought that it was done well here. And no, it didn't seem shoehorned. It didn't seem forced. It was actually fun. And I absolutely loved Cara Dune's cussing as she was trying to unjam her gun. That was beautiful.
Son of a mud scuffer. I mean, yeah, that's true. And another bad example of this would be the Birds of Prey. That movie said it felt like it was really forced. And it just shows the difference in writing between this excellent show where everything, even the fan service, seems just like natural part of the show, to someone, you know, not putting in the same effort.
And next on our list, Moff Gideon. He always seemed to be a few steps ahead of the heroes in everything they did, and he had a plan for any very contingency that happened on this episode. And we'll talk about that a little more here in a bit, except for one.
This is an ongoing thing that we've been saying about Moff Gideon. The fact that he rose from kind of a standard ISB officer up to the rank of Moff. He has had to obviously prove himself in a lot of different scenarios. He's probably been a member of the Empire for quite a while. And I think the way that he's planned out every one of his moves leading up to this point so far, I think that just kind of goes to show what a tactician he really is, because he seemed prepared. To me, at least, he seemed prepared and ready for what was coming to his ship. The minute he saw that hologram of Din Djarin expressing, look, I'm going to come after the kid. He's mine. He means more to me than you could ever know. As soon as he saw that hologram, I think he knew, and he was already planning, all right, where am I going to move, 5 spaces ahead? How am I going to prepare? Because I know that I'm about ready to deal with a siege on my ship. I know that they're going to probably come, they're going to attack. I have to assume the type of people that he's been in contact with, and I need to know how I'm going to deal with them. And he was just every bit as Giancarlo Esposito as he possibly could. I mean, he was perfect.
Yes, he was perfect. Giancarlo Esposito. I mean, and Moff Gideon. I love how he explained his point of view from whatever's transpired through the entire show. It's his point of view, calling Mandalorians murderers and murderous savages, and he says he's seeking balance in the universe. Maybe that is really what he's doing in his mind. Remember, the best villains don't think they're bad; they think they're doing good. I mean, if you look at the Emperor, he knew all he wanted to do was rule. At least now we got Moff Gideon on this side explaining his motivation. And would he have, let's say Bo-Katan did not go on the strip with him, would he have actually given up to Mando, the child? Who knows? I think he might have. But I think once he knew Bo-Katan was there, he was planning on losing. Like that would be, like Doug said, he maybe had that plan 5 steps ahead. And if it comes up like, oh, if Bo-Katan shows up here, and they both show up together, this is what I'm going to do. So or maybe he formulated that plan when they got there. I don't know, but it was brilliant. He's like on the Exorcist, the Exorcist, the Emperor level of planning ahead, because he knew that if he lost in battle to Din, that Bo-Katan would have to beat Din in battle in order to get that dark saber. So brilliant planning ahead by him. He's quite an evil genius.
Yeah, you're not wrong about that, Dave. You hit the nail on the head. The best villains are the ones that don't know that they're the villain, or that don't think they're the villain. And he really doesn't. Yeah, you said it correctly. All he wants, or at least all he says he wants, is peace and order in the universe. And he thinks that either the Empire or maybe even just him, who knows exactly who's pulling his strings. We haven't quite figured out where he falls in the hierarchy of the Emperor and Grand Admiral Thrawn quite yet. We know that they're probably related in some way, but yeah, he's definitely a mastermind when it comes to this. And what you said about him wanting to force a confrontation between Din Djarin and between Bo-Katan, yeah, I could definitely see him planning that ahead. I really think that might have been part of what he thought was going to be his endgame, until what we're going to talk about a little bit later, until with that, what ended up actually happening. I think he probably thought, I'm going to get these two fighting each other, and hey, if it even escalates into a full-on, another Mandalorian civil war over who's going to be able to rule them all, they're out of my way. I can go ahead and bring the Empire back. We're going to bring order back to the universe, and the murderous savages can kill each other off.
And once those murderous savages, kill each other off, he'll be able to step in and rule Mandalore like he's wanted from day one. And that leads us to the next thing, Luke Skywalker. I think the fact that they were able to keep this under wraps for a year, no leaks, no one saw him on set. There was a lot of people guessed it was going to be Luke that showed up. I don't think we were any of them. We thought some other things were going to happen. But the fact that they kept it secret made it so much better. In our Theory Palooza video for this, which you can see right up here, Dave said, what if it's an X-Wing, guys? And we kind of thought about that. And when I saw that X-Wing, I was just like, I was like on the edge of my seat, sitting in the living room by myself, just like the tension. I was just like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. And like we said earlier in the video, I was taken back to 7-year-old watching Star Wars for the first time. It was just perfect.
Absolutely. Yeah, seeing Luke come back was definitely, it was being a kid again, watching Star Wars for the first time. That is the perfect description, Keith. It really was great. seeing him there, I second guessed myself a couple of times because I kept thinking for sure the X-Wing landed. Is that no, they wouldn't do that. They wouldn't bring Luke Skywalker in the show. This is they're goofing with us. It's going to be somebody else. Green lightsaber. Is that no, it's got to be another Jedi with a green lightsaber. It's going to be anybody else. It could be, who knows? There's tons of Jedis from Legends that they could pull out, or Jedis from here. They could make up someone. They made up Din Djarin. They could have made somebody up because that's what they do. If they don't pull something out of the toy chest, they make something up and it works. And then when I saw the hood and then I saw the badass force powers, I was like, oh shit, that's Luke.
Yeah, when I saw Luke, I about peed my pants. That was so good. And you've heard so much about his badass powers that developed after Return of the Jedi and how he could have 6 lightsaber duels going on at the same time. He's just controlling all the lightsabers and all that stuff. And you don't get to see that in the movies. And then, boom, you get to see that on The Mandalorian. It was amazing. I loved it when Grogu's ears, went up when he landed in the bay. I love how Gideon just loses his crap, tries to kill himself and Grogu as soon as Luke shows up. So he knows about Luke, and he knows it ain't gonna end well for him. It was a fantastic way to bring the universe back together.
And there was so much that was great about this scene. He was still wearing all black, kind of an homage to his father, perhaps, or at least that scene from Rogue One, where Darth Vader was in the hallway. I thought there was a lot of flashbacks to that. Seeing his green lightsaber in action was absolutely breathtaking. That was amazing. His slow, methodical, and purposeful combat against the Dark Troopers, I was just absolutely mesmerized on my seat. I couldn't believe I was actually seeing this. And then we saw all of his force powers. We saw force push, we saw force pull, and we saw force crush on that last Dark Trooper. And it definitely reminded me of Anakin, when he crushed everything in that surgical suite when he found out Padme had died. They just did a tremendous job. Favreau and Filoni, please take a bow. You deserve it. And another thing that worked in Chapter 16 of The Mandalorian was Grogu asking to see Din's face and Din showing it. The Pedro Pascal acting to a puppet in this scene, you would have never guessed it. I mean, he was holding a puppet and there was just real, genuine emotion on his face that he was basically losing his son. I can't say enough about the tremendous acting in this scene. Following the Luke Skywalker scene, seeing this, it just propelled this episode to damn near masterpiece.
I think that's why it was so important that they had a physical object rather than make it CGI. Not only does, and we've said this before, not only does it just look better on film than, what CG could offer, but you can actually see that Din has something physically in his hands, that he's holding something. If you guys think back to that scene that was put back into A New Hope, where Han is talking to Jabba, and the scene was originally filmed with a human Jabba the Hutt. And so Han is staring at what was eye level for the human, but is the chest, I guess, of CG Jabba. It doesn't look real. You can tell it looks off. It's entering that kind of weirdness that nobody likes with bad CG. And that isn't the case here. Here you've got Din looking directly into Grogu's face, and you see that little hand go up and touch his cheek. And I swear to God, I wasn't crying, you guys.
I don't even know what I can add to that. I was like Doug. I got a little choked up when that happened.
And number 8 on our list of things that worked in this episode was the post-credit scene. If you did not stay watching for the post-credit scene, go ahead. We'll take a break. Go watch it now. Okay, you're back? Excellent. As soon as I saw that they were back on Tatooine, I was like, oh my God, here it comes. And you just see Bib Fortuna sitting on Jabba's, throne. And we see, Fennec come in and she's blasting people, followed by Boba Fett. And he's like, Bib Fortuna's trying to talk. Oh, it's so great. And he just blasts him. He knows exactly what he wants and how he's going to get it. And I cannot wait. Seeing that we're going to see the Book of Boba Fett in December 2021, just blew me away. After an episode that had blown me away many times.
not going too far into theories because we'll do another video on that. He just claimed his spot at the top of the crime syndicate on Tatooine. That's badass. He just walked in, took care of it, and he's already got a sidekick. Good for him.
I really like the fact that Fennec is just kind of sitting there, all like just cool. She just looks cool, sitting on the armrest of his new throne. How quickly he was able to dispatch all of those guys. It was really badass. And I mean, we said it when he had his reveal. We saw, we were commenting on his fighting style, how he obviously learned something from the Sand People, in the way that he was swinging that club around and the way that he was able to dispatch all those stormtroopers. And as you heard and you felt the cracks in their armor, and the way that he entered Jabba's former palace and just took all these people out. Yeah, this is really friggin' cool. And it kind of makes me wonder, now that he's the leader of this crime syndicate, does this mean in this upcoming limited series, are we going to see maybe a return of the Pikes?
Speaking of Boba Fett, I wanted to mention that at the beginning of this episode, when he made the diversion and then he took off, he had to do that because what if Boba was there when Luke Skywalker showed up? He would definitely recognize him. So another great bit of writing there. All right, so that was the things that did work. Here's the things that didn't. We got 3 things that did not work. And believe me, they're all a little nitpicky. This episode was so good. But the first thing that didn't work, number 1, they changed the speech in the recap when Mando was saying, the same speech back to Moth Gideon, in which on this episode in the recap he said it, and on the last episode he said he. I think it made a difference to me in the last episode when he said he over it, because it obviously shows a connection. But again, this was not even part of the show. This was just a recap, so I'm being a little nitpicky here.
Yeah, I picked up on that. I kind of heard it in the beginning and I thought, maybe it was an editing mistake. It was weird. And yeah, I agree with you, Dave. It definitely it made more sense for Din Djarin to refer to him as he, to put a little bit more person into him instead of it being an object, the way that Moff Gideon probably saw Grogu. So yeah, I get that. But at the same time, I thought about it for a second, and then it was just like, whatever. Okay. Again, like you said in the beginning, nitpicks.
And then second on our list of things that didn't work was the de-aging on Mark Hamill. Now, don't get me wrong, this did not ruin the episode in any way. And it was only really when you saw him talking, it just didn't look right. The way they did it with Nick Fury, Samuel L. Jackson, Nick Fury, and Captain Marvel looked much more fluid and good. For some reason, whatever, it just looked a little bit off to me. But it, once again, not enough to ruin this episode in any way.
Yeah, I agree with you, Keith. It didn't really ruin the episode for me. I was still coming down from my high of having just seen Luke Skywalker completely decimate that entire platoon of dark troopers that Moff Gideon was talking about, saying, "Oh, you guys better watch out, here they come," and then watching him, completely piss himself as soon as he saw who had entered his ship. So yeah, I was still coming down from that, and I was like, could have been better, but it's not as bad as Rogue One de-aging was. It wasn't as bad as that, and it certainly wasn't as bad as, like I'd mentioned, the Jabba the Hutt CG. So it could have been a lot worse. And also, I've got a shitty TV, so I'd barely noticed.
And another thing, number 3, the things that didn't work, and again, it's very nitpicky. There was no art at the end. I always look forward to seeing the art during the credits. I understand why they didn't do it, but I kind of missed it.
Well, if you want, I can get out my crayons. I'll doodle up some art, and we'll put together a slideshow of my best Mandalorian season finale art. You just wait, Dave. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah, Doug, I think I'd really appreciate that.
I was like, Dave, I was watching the credits as I normally do, and I'm like, wait, how come there's no art? What's going on? What's this?
On to the reviews. Well, I don't think they could have done any better. I think everything I've said in this review and breakdown, I don't even have anything to add. It was so incredible. It took me back to being a kid. Great job. I'm giving it 10 out of 10.
Yeah, Dave is absolutely right. Chapter 16 was dang near perfect. I mean, the little things that we thought, didn't work were so small and so nitpicky that it did not change, anything for how great this episode was. They did everything right. Not only did they make it a tremendous episode where we saw a lot of things answered, but it also left a lot of questions unanswered, that we'll get to in our Theory Palooza video coming out later this week. But it made Dave's absolutely right. It made me feel like I was 70 years old seeing A New Hope in the theater again. It was that perfect. And I'm going to stick with Dave. I'm giving this a 10 out of 10. Perfection.
I have to completely agree with the other guys. This was an amazing episode. It was actually hard for us to come up with things that we could put into our section of things that didn't work. And that's why we prefaced it by saying these were nitpicks, because they really were. This episode was, as Keith put it, dang near perfect. It had so much in it. And the fact that it ended with that just outstanding, I'm even saying before the Boba Fett reveal, the fact that it ended with that outstanding show of power with Luke Skywalker just at his best and at his most powerful was phenomenal to watch. And the fact that we got that emotional scene with Grogu saying goodbye to Din Djarin. And of course, the fact that we got that cool post-credit scene, which was great. It kind of ranks up there with that awesome reveal at the end of season 1, where we saw Moth Gideon come out of the TIE fighter with the Darksaber, and we were all just like, oh my God. And we didn't think it was going to get any more amazing than that. Cool. A nod to Clone Wars. No, we got friggin' Boba Fett getting his own show, which is something nerds like us, and like I assume all of you guys watching this video, have been asking for, some redemption for Boba Fett. And not only did we get it in this series, got it in previous episodes, and in this episode, now we're going to go get a whole show about it. And I can't wait. So I agree, 10 out of 10 across the board.
But that's what we saw about this episode. What did the rest of you all think? Is there anything we missed, Easter egg wise? What worked? What didn't work? Let us know down in the comments. And thank you for watching us here at Not Your Status Quo. And we'll see you next time.
Ah, delicious Luke Skywalker.